Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Eggen and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be creating these postage grid cards using my silhouette stamps. I recently had a viewer say they would like to see me do some more videos shopping my stash, and that is exactly what I did today. Now, I am going to have everything linked down below in the video description. Some things at the time of this video are out of stock, but be sure to click the notify me button on any of the websites so you're notified when they do come back in stock. And I have linked to multiple places so that it does give you some options to shop around. So one of the main pieces of these cards is this Master Layout 14 die set from Gina Designs. Now in this particular die set, we have the postage grid, and then there is also an additional layer that you can use to mat behind your postage grid. I'm only going to be using that on one of the cards today, but I was having so much fun that I have 4 cards that I'm going to share with you, and that means 4 different ink blending combinations. So I went ahead and die cut out 4 of these panels out of layering white cardstock from Gina Designs. And I am going to start by using the Altenew sticky mat to hold my cardstock in place. I'm also going to be showing you throughout this video multiple ways that you can do this process. I'm placing the postage grid stencil over my panel, and the sticky mat is going to hold that stencil in place for me. Now I'm going to be doing some ink blending. So I am starting with key lime ink down towards the bottom. I come in very light-handed and kind of slowly start going in circular motions. I kind of start off of the stencil and work my way on, so that way I don't get any harsh marks from my ink. So I blended the key lime about maybe a third of the way up, and then I'm going to come in with a sea glass. Now you may notice I do tap off on my work surface once in a while, and that's mainly because I don't want that harsh application of ink right away. I want to have kind of a little bit tapped off first. I'd rather come in soft-handed versus too harsh right away because I can always add more ink over the top. So the sea glass I am blending kind of right in the center. I go into the key lime a little bit and then up towards the top, so it's going to fade off. And then for the very top, I'm going to be using dark lilac, and this is really going to pack the punch on the background. So as I blend this dark color, I am going very light-handed. It's going to be kind of light-handed towards the sea glass, but up towards the top more, I am going to apply a little bit more ink and a little bit more pressure with my brush to really help intensify that. Once I am happy with my ink blended background, I am going to take my reverse tweezers and I'm going to use them to help pick up that stencil from that sticky mat. So you can see it just peels away. And I'll do the same thing with the cardstock. I'll clean that stencil a little later on, but I use the tweezers to help pick up the cardstock from my sticky mat. Now, with darker colors and colors like reds, you're going to see that the mat does stain. This mat is created from the same material that your clear stamps are made from, so you can use a stamp cleaner on here. I am just wiping off that excess ink with my tidy towel. Now I'm going to do my stamping. So in my Misty stamping tool, I have a piece of grid paper and I'm placing a little bit of repositionable tape on there to hold my cardstock in place. Now, when I do my silhouette stamping, I need to mask off those areas of that postage. You may be wondering why I didn't just leave the stencil in place. And part of that reason, or actually the main reason, is because a stencil is thicker than these masking magic strips from Gina Designs. The masking magic strips are super thin. You can barely even tell they're there, whereas the stencil is a little bit thicker. So if I were to try and stamp on top of that stencil, it's going to give me a significant line that's not going to match up. So I went through these masking magic strips and I placed them over those postage areas where all those little dots are die cut out. And then I also took some Post-it tape, which is a little bit thicker, and I placed it all around the border. One of the reasons I am using Post-it tape around the outer edge is because masking magic is gold in my craft room. I don't want to use any more than I have to because I know it goes in and out of stock because everybody loves it. So I try to use as little as I can. So once I had everything kind of masked off, I am bringing in an image from the Natural Silhouettes and then this butterfly from the Butterfly Trio. I have been dying to turn some of these backgrounds into silhouettes. Silhouette stamps are some of my favorite stamp sets ever because it just means I can stamp on all of these beautiful ink blended backgrounds. Now, one tip I do want to share is that whether your stamp is brand new or conditioned, you want to give your blended background time to dry. If your background is still a little wet because the ink is still drying, you could possibly pull up the cardstock when you're opening the door of your Misty. I'll show you a little later on in the video where that happened to me. Here it didn't happen, so I lucked out. Now I'm inking these images up with the black Onyx ink from Gina K Designs. I'm going to apply some pretty good pressure, and I already kind of assumed I was going to have to stamp it twice, mainly because I have two images that are taking a lot of ink. So I am going to stamp that one more time. I just make sure that everything is tucked into the corner just like I had started. Now to really turn these into a postage kind of stamp, I'm going to bring in the Postcards and More stamp set, another one of my favorites from the release from Gina K Designs. So I took a couple different sentiments and also kind of that postage mark, and I placed those down onto my background, picked them up at the door of the Misty, and I left this part in for you guys. I inked them up, and just as I was about to close the door of my Misty onto my background, I realized that my postage mark down there in the bottom right-hand corner was upside down. So I just went ahead, cleaned it off, took it off for right now because I did not want that to be upside down. And I stamped the other two sentiments that I had picked out. So I'm pressing very gently because I don't want to squish them and distort them. I do go ahead and stamp them twice. So once I clean those off, then I could bring in that postage mark, ink that up, and stamp that down. And I really like how it overhangs. I think that kind of just adds to the whole postage look of it all. And then I'm taking my tweezers and I'm going to carefully peel away those masking magic strips. I already removed the post-it tape from around the edges, and I am being very cautious about this because the ink is still sitting on top of that masking magic because it does kind of sit on top of that smooth surface. So I don't want to touch it and risk getting black fingerprints anywhere. Now I'm going to create another background. Now there are parts of the video that I do speed up, but I do want to still give you the stamp sets that I used or the colors that I used. This one I decided to do in a landscape style. So I'm starting off with Lemon Drop ink. Again, I am using this sticky mat from Altenew, placing the stencil over the top where the sticky mat is holding my stencil in place. And then I'm using the Lemon Drop, was a really nice kind of pale yellow, starting down at the very bottom, working my way up so it kind of fades off into the white. And then I'm going to bring in Tangerine Twist. That's going to go right in the center. Again, it's going to blend into the yellow and then fade off into white up towards the top. And I'm going to bring in Red Velvet. And this is such a gorgeous, intense color combination. So as I was blending that Red Velvet, I felt like it needed just a little bit more of a punch. So I brought in Faded Brick. You could also bring in like a dark brown, like a chocolate color, if you really wanted to have that more contrast at the top. So I'm peeling up that stencil. Again, that red and that orange are most likely going to stain the sticky mat, which I am totally fine with. Then I'm going to bring that over to my Misty stamping tool and I'm going to stamp a background on that. Now I decided to switch it up a little bit. I wanted to try out this sticky mat from My Sweet Petunia. That is going to hold my cardstock down very well. I went ahead, added those masking magic strips and the post-it tape. I don't know if I'm going to do something like this again. The post-it tape really stuck down to that sticky mat. The sticky mat is also pretty brand new, but I don't know if I'll quite be using the sticky mat again like this. So for this background, I am using the Summer Silhouettes stamp set. It had a nice kind of border going along the bottom of my card. It just fit really well on the landscape orientation. And it also had these adorable little butterflies. I at first thought one of these butterflies was a fairy. It kind of looked like the side view of a fairy, but I think it's all a butterfly. And they were just very delicate and fit right into those postage areas. Now again, I'm stamping in the black onyx ink. Any nice deep black ink is going to work for this. And again, I will stamp it twice. I really want to make sure I'm getting that great impression. So as I mentioned earlier, I just started digging in my stash. I have a ton of the Gina K Designs silhouette stamp sets. I just kind of went through and grabbed what spoke to me for these backgrounds. Some of them may be in stock, some of them might not be, but dig through your stash or get on the notify me list if these are ones that interest you. I did also stamp in those postage marks from the Postcards and More stamp set. Now, here's where I started pulling off that Post-it tape and the masking magic strips. And the Post-it tape really stuck down. You probably would be pretty safe using the masking magic, but my Post-it tape really stuck down to that mat. Otherwise, I do love the idea of a sticky mat in my Misty stamping tool. If you don't have the masking magic strips and you just have the regular masking magic sheets, you could trim them out. I think it's about maybe 1/4 of an inch that you could trim them down to fit in between those postage grid marks. So I will be turning these all into cards at the end of the video. I really just wanted to go through, play with some different ink blends, and really create these fun postage silhouette scenes. So here is another one. I just kind of put all the sticky mats away and I went right to my work surface. I taped everything down to my glass work surface. I started out with sweet corn at the bottom of the card. Then I moved on to, I think it was medium orchid, and then dark lilac at the top. So again, I removed my stencil. I picked this up from my glass work surface, went over to my Misty stamping tool, and here I just kind of brought back in my grid paper that I have down in my Misty. I'm using the summer silhouettes again at the bottom, and then this butterfly is from Ornate Spring, which is a part of the current card kit that's available at Gina K Designs. When the next release happens, that stamp set will be released into the regular product line. And again, stamping that down twice in the black Onyx ink. Now, one more idea that I had that I wanted to try out was, again, I took that postage grid stencil, placed it over my postage grid, and this time I am masking off each of those block areas and I'm going through a rainbow of color. Now, a lot of this, I am using the leftover ink that's on my brush. Once in a while, I have to grab an ink pad. I did not list the colors for these because I really just kind of grabbed what was ever on the brush. This one, I did bring in sea glass because it was such a light color. I needed to add more ink to my blending brush. So this is starting out where each square or each shape is a different color. Then I'm going to bring in the Ornamental fan stencil and I'm going to place it over the top. Now, you can use any stencil over the top. I think this is kind of a fun stencil on stencil idea. And then I'm going to go through and add a darker shade of color. I think I might have used carnation on the first one. I really don't know. I kind of just turned around, grabbed some colors of ink, and started ink blending just to give it a tone on tone look with the stencil on stencil. So it sounds like a lot, but it's really super easy. Even if you didn't do each block in a different color, think of how fun this would be with something like snowflakes, where you did a light blue background and then added snowflake stencils over the top with a darker blue. So a lot of different options you can do with this type of technique. So off screen, I went ahead and finished all of my cards by adding them to card bases and using sentiments. So I will list those for you here. This card, I used the Happy Word die. So that was die cut out of a matte gold cardstock. And the word anniversary is from Summer Silhouettes. I just heat embossed it in white onto black cardstock. So this one has the butterfly trio, the natural silhouettes, and the postcards and more. And that was all attached to a card front made from sea glass. My stencil on stencil is using the Hugs Word die out of black cardstock and the Ornamental Fans stencil. I also added this panel to a piece of cardstock that is from Sweet Corn, and these are all 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and all of the postage backgrounds are popped up with foam squares. This next one I created using the Summer Silhouettes. That's where the I Miss You So Much comes from. Heat embossed in white embossing powder onto black cardstock using the Ornate Spring and Summer Silhouettes. And my card front panel is made from Whisper cardstock. And then my last card here is using the Summer Silhouettes, the postcards and more. And then that particular sentiment comes from the stamp set, You Give Me Butterflies. And there's a coordinating die that die cuts out that sentiment, and it looked perfect for the front of that card. And there we have it, 4 pretty quick and easy cards. Actually, I think doing the sentiments took me longer than doing the backgrounds, but I shopped my stash. I played around with my silhouette backgrounds. I have some new ink blending combinations here for you that I hope you find helpful. I will have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog, and I'm also going to list things on my blog for you to save for your reference in the future. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I will see you again real soon.